Hello, hi. Hello, it's so good to see everybody. This is a little unexpected Instagram Live. I was attempting to go live on Facebook and it was just a disaster. So that didn't work out very well, but I'm going to attempt to. I have this guest host that I'm dying to talk to. And so I'm going to see if I can bring her in here. If this is going to work out. Dr. Christine Smith is hopefully I think I invited her to join it. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me? Dr. Christine, are you there?
Hello. I can't hear you.
You can't? Can you see me?
I can't see you. Wait, I'm going to come back for a second. My tech is just being a whole adventure this morning.
Yeah, this is why I don't do more of these, because I hate the technical difficulties piece. And if it's on my end, I really apologize. Let's see. Let's see. All right, I'm trying to bring Dr. Christine back in here. I'm so sorry. I'm fairly new at hosting other people on Instagram or Facebook, and apparently it's not meant for me so much today, but we're attempting. I'm trying to bring her back in here live.
We got it.
Yay! I can see you.
Oh, wow. So nice to see you.
Oh, you too. And I'm so sorry. Thank you for going with it slow here with me. Yeah, and we got lots of people hanging out with us already. So this is great. Maybe this is where we were supposed to be.
There you go.
I'm Dr. Emily Roedersheimer, and I am here and I'm hosting Dr. Christine Smith. And I'm so excited to have this conversation. Dr. Smith and I both did training through the Institute for Functional Medicine, so we have a lot in common there. But she also has a background in cognitive neuroscience, which is super cool, and specializes in holistic injury recovery and chronic inflammation prevention, which is like amazing. My followers don't hear a lot about, injury and recovery and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm super excited to jump in with you. And I would love to hear, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into that specialty and what brought you there?
Yeah, definitely. I actually think this is really relevant for your channel, because the way that I teach people to think about injury is a little bit unique. Because when we say injury, people often think of like, oh, spraining your ankle or throwing out your back or tweaking your shoulder. Those are types of injuries, but your gut can also get injured. And your cells can get injured, and your biochemistry can get injured. And so if we start to look at it that way, it brings this whole new perception that we can take on what it means to be healthy and what it means to recover. And I know you work a lot with, autoimmune and stress and things like that. And people forget that stress can be an injury on a biochemical level.
Right.
And if you go through a traumatic experience, the neurological community is now considering PTSD to be a traumatic brain injury. It's classified as a brain injury.
Wow.
Yeah, right? And people don't really know this.
Yeah.
And so when you start understanding it that way, you can really start to look at your body and your health in a whole new way. And the reason this is relevant for autoimmune is because autoimmune is usually the result of a bunch of compounded cellular and biochemical injuries that never got to recover. And it usually involves stress in some way. So if we can start looking at the body like that, then all of a sudden, when you have like a really stressful week at work and you're feeling extra puffy that week, like, my cells got injured this week from that stress at work. I should probably be more careful with my food, and I should rest, and I should treat my body like I just twisted my ankle, but really like my cells just got sprained from this really stressful week. And then we actually allow ourselves time to recover, which, let's be honest, we kind of suck at, especially in America. Like, there's this weird badge of honor of like
Yeah.
pushing yourself through your stress threshold, which is how we end up with chronic disease. And that's why I focus a lot on chronic inflammation, is because if I can teach people this early, and I can teach you how to catch your body before it falls down this biochemical injury cascade, then that's how we prevent chronic disease.
That's phenomenal. That's really a great reframe. Thank you for that, because I do think we think of a sprained ankle, or we think of, you know, a torn meniscus, or so, you know, something like that when we think of the term injury. But it is very much, you're exactly right. We're injuring ourselves on a day-to-day basis with the lifestyle or whatever that you know, we're dealing with. So that's so powerful. I do, and I love the idea of, you know, what does recovery time, like what does an injury allow us to do when we have to slow down to recover? So I'd love to hear your 2 cents on that.
Totally. Yes, I love that question. So I'm just going to like answer it directly, and then I'll give some examples.
Sure.
So basically what that allows us to do is to reprioritize our life. Like there's this hidden gift in forced recovery time where you are forced to figure out what's most important to you. And it sucks. The process sucks.
Yes.
But it can be life-changing on the long term, because you realize that your health and your longevity and time with people that you care about and doing things that make your body feel happy are significantly more important than that project at work. Unless your work is your purpose.
Right.
But, or maybe it makes you realize that your work isn't your purpose and you don't actually like your job. And then you go through this whole entire shift in your life to something you love doing instead of something that you do because you feel like you have to. When really, when you review those things, you realize you don't have to do anything and you can choose to do whatever you want. And so sometimes there's this like massive perspective shift, because when you get injured and all of your patterns change, it knocks you out of autopilot.
Right.
And then you're forced to kind of re-examine your life a little bit. And so that's kind of the journey that I'll take people through when they come to me with stuff like this, is helping them to reconnect with the depth of themselves and the depth of life. And that's why my practice name is Depth Wellness, is because I want to help people remember everything beyond our autopilot states. Because I think a lot of us, you know, just the last couple of years and just a lot lately, because of how our society runs, sometimes we just kind of feel like we're running in that hamster wheel, and like we are just like barely always getting things done, but we kind of don't always have the purpose behind it.
Yeah.
Our purpose is like what makes our life enjoyable. So that's where I like to help people out. And, you know, when it comes to looking at injury in this way, we all know that if you get a concussion, if you get multiple concussions right afterwards, you can get chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is, or CTE, which is like the whole argument behind the football industry and why football players can sometimes get dementia in like their 50s. And, you know, understanding injury in that way, it's compounded injury. So if we understand that twisting your ankle is an injury, and getting in a fender bender creates like a fascial injury, and that stressful thing at work is an injury, and maybe a family member going through a hard time is having an injury, and then let's say like something dramatic happens to your home, like you have a flood, those are all forms of injury in your body on a biochemical level.
So there's some sugar on top also, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then if you like have the crappy diet on top of it, now you have an injured gut too. And let's be real, like when we have that much stress going on, we all tend to turn to our great comfort foods. And then it exacerbates it, and we get stuck in this like chronic injury cascade. And then I start to teach people about how their immune cells work and how you can get stuck in this funny place where it's like your immune cells are trying to heal something, and they come to the area and they release all this chemistry. But then sometimes the rest of your immune system can't keep up with like the cleaning of debris. And then all of this chemistry going on causes more tissue damage, which calls in more of these acute reactors, which creates more chemistry, and the janitors still can't keep up. And then you just get stuck in like damaging your tissue. And then if your immune system accidentally picks up some of that damaged tissue with whatever else it's trying to fight, then we start to have an autoimmune reaction, which is like a self-reaction.
Yeah. Wow. You just said so much right there that I like, I mean, if I had a mic, I would drop it. But I love the concept of like, sometimes we need a pattern interrupt. Like we are so much on that. I was thinking the term hamster wheel while you were talking, so much on that hamster wheel, and we're barely staying alive. Like we're barely staying on the hamster wheel, right? So there's like no time to think, am I doing what I want to be doing? Is this the right path for me? You know, what can I change? Like we can't even think about that. So in some ways, an injury is really a blessing. And you hear people talk about, you know, I went through cancer or whatever, and it was the best thing that ever happened, you know, and you're like, how can somebody say that's the best thing that ever happened? But it's because they really had to stop and reprioritize and look at what, you know, are they going in the direction they want their life to go? And there's just so many different pulls on us now that you have to be like so intentional to not get dragged back into the hamster wheel, right? It's like, I tell my followers, it's like swimming upstream to be healthy in this country. Like you really have to work hard. You can't just kind of go with the flow, because you will be pulled right down with everyone else into the chronic illness.
Well, category. And there's this weird concept that I don't really think that we think about in, you know, places like the United States. So there's a concept of food deserts, which 100% exist in the US, especially in like rural, sometimes less in rural areas. It depends on if you're in a farming community. If you're in a farming community, you're actually in like the best place for food.
Sure.
But if you're in an area where it's like the only thing near you is a 7-Eleven,
right?
There's no food in that 7-Eleven. There's synthetic mimics of food, but there is no food in that 7-Eleven. So that is a food desert. And, you know, it's what they, you know, call a first world problem. But I lived abroad and lived in Africa and lived in places that we consider third world, and they had more real food than we do sometimes. So it's just something to consider, that like real food is considered something that is an ingredient rather than something that is made of ingredients. Right. If you're eating things that are made of ingredients and they're not made of real food items, they're made of things that were spit out of a machine or were synthetic or are genetically modified, which means that you can't find it in nature, then that's really confused information that you're putting into your body, and your body gets confused and your immune system gets confused. And then this is how we can start to have a lot of weird immune reactions. So, you know, when you consider the fact that being on a whole foods diet is considered a diet,
right?
You realize
what's wrong with that statement,
food.
right?
Right? Like, so just something to consider.
No. I would love to hear a little bit more about your path and because I know you were a competitive snowboarder, which is like so cool, and had an injury yourself. Is that correct?
Yes. And, you know, that injury that happened when I was 17, I basically dislocated my knee and kind of tore my meniscus, and it was like a whole thing. I recovered because I was 17 and we bounced back and it was fine. But nobody really broke up my scar tissue. And so then over the next couple decades, I had all this kind of scar tissue pulling at stuff. And I kept kind of just retweaking that knee and re-injuring that knee. And it just kind of kept happening, which, you know, we're taught to be like, oh, like no big deal. You tweaked it. It's fine. Blah, blah, blah. But over time, it creates this like chronic inflammation response, and that tissue keeps getting sloughed off and your immune system keeps having to deal with it. And then later I got, you know, it kind of really redislocated because all my muscles I was stressed out. I wasn't sleeping. This was actually during grad school, right?
Okay,
Gotta love the doctoral program. So I was super stressed out. I wasn't sleeping. I was taking board exams. I had a full class load, full patient load, and I was working in the evenings. It was insane. And so I was actually in the middle of teaching a yoga class because that was my job, and it was a hot class, which makes your ligaments more stretchy. And as a female, your hormones shift, and I just happened to be at the right time in my hormones where my ligaments were extra stretchy, and I was in a low lunge, nothing dramatic, and I popped my kneecap out while I was teaching a class, and then that got injured. And then that had happened, actually, I'd sprained my wrist about 3 months before, and then kind of like torn a ligament. But it was board exams, and I was just trying to finish school and all the things. So I was like teaching on my fists and not taking a break from that wrist injury, which upregulated inflammation in my body, which made my ligaments weaker, which allowed my knee to pop out. And then I was dealing with that injury, and it was just this whole cumulative effect. And then I graduated into a whole bunch of just my life not going in the direction that was expected because of some things going on in the economy. And so it was a lot of stress. And then all of a sudden and then the knee got worse, and I didn't necessarily want to go through surgery. And so I went and I interviewed a bunch of doctors, and on my 13th doctor, 13, because 10 of them were like, you have no choice, you have to reconstruct your knee in your 30s, blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
So I really don't want to do that. 13th doctor did regenerative medicine. He goes, oh, I can fix that. And for anyone who doesn't know, regenerative medicine is using your own blood. They spin it down, they re-inject your plasma back into you, and then your own cells heal your body. It's just redistributing the fluids. So freaking cool. And people don't people don't even know this exists. And I ended up doing like 3 rounds. One of them was they took a couple stem cells from my pelvis and put it into the bone lesion, because I took out a chunk of bone and cartilage in my kneecap. I couldn't even like go down the stairs. I'm an active person.
Yeah.
Then there's the whole identity crisis that goes with being injured like that, where that's the existential crisis where you're like, what am I doing with my life? Do I need to reposition what I'm doing? And actually during that time, I completely changed the trajectory of how I was doing things, which is why I teach so much now.
Wow.
It just made me realize I wanted to go about things in a different way. But in that process, it's an inflammatory treatment. Like, it works on inflammation, works using your inflammation in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But my body was like inflamed and stressed, and I had just gone through 4 years of grad school, and it was like insane. And so all of this kind of compounded, and I started getting these rashes. I was very confused, and then I realized it was tied to dairy. And then I like went through a treatment that pushed my body a little too fast, and I didn't know that my body was dealing with a mold exposure.
Oh no!
It was just everything, right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes when it rains, it pours, and so my body just kind of got like overwhelmed, and then my immune system started doing funny things.
Yeah.
But what I realized is I needed to be so much more careful with my food. And like that was what I had control over for working with my immune system. And I actually kind of had to not use a lot of supplements because my immune system was so sensitive at the time, just from all of this stuff, that it couldn't even really process supplements well. And so I was getting kind of desperate because I was very limited on my food, and I couldn't really use conventional medicine or functional medicine. Yeah. And so then I turned to really deep meditation because that was like my only choice. And doing really deep meditation is what allowed my immune system to finally calm down enough. And for me to change my perspective enough, because that's something else that we don't talk about a lot in healthcare. We'll address the physical body and we'll address nutrition, but we don't talk about the fact that you're sitting there in your head feeling like a victim and like you're under attack. Yes. And if your brain is sending signals to your body that you're under attack, your immune system is going to go on the defense. And it's going to be super upregulated and super inflamed. And then you're going to start to have autoimmune reactions, which is what was happening in my body. Yeah. So when I started shifting my perception and really working with my food, my body started to come back to a normal place. And now I've been able to work with supplements again. But this has been a multi-year process of getting my body balanced and having to be really careful with food after that whole like compounding injury.
Right. Well, I think it's phenomenal to just like follow you now and see how healthy you are. And you did overcome all of that, because I do think it's, you know, the conventional medical model sometimes, you know, on the 12th, by the 12th doctor, you start to feel like I have no choice or whatever, you know, and a lot of people I'm sure come to see you, or they come to see me, and they are in sort of that victim mentality and I can't get better. There's nothing to do, you know, and if you don't believe it, it's never going to happen. But you are living, breathing proof that, you know, and myself too, at reversed rheumatoid arthritis, you know, it is possible. There's so much you can do. And I think that's the main thing I want to get across here is there's just always hope and there's always options. So you were referring to platelet-rich plasma injections there. Do you want to tell any more about that, or maybe share like in what cases that's a appropriate treatment for someone?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to share. So there's like a variety of levels. If anyone is interested, I have a couple people, especially in Colorado, that I really trust, who I think do a good job. And then they know some other people. So if you need referrals, like just comment on this video afterwards and I'll put referrals in there. But I ended up working with somebody in Boulder, and then I have someone in Golden that I really like. And I'm pretty careful about who I'll pick because there's a lot of stem cell stuff going on right now. And there's a lot of versions of it. I actually did a whole live on this. If you want like an hour talk on it, you can find it earlier on my feed. But yeah, I'm careful with how I go about it. Like, I knew that I did not want foreign cells in my body. I wanted my own cells, and that was a personal choice for me. And I also wanted to work with somebody who did it in clinic, so that it was like, it was done right there. The cells are in their most vital state. I also wanted someone who worked with nutrition before and after, so that we prepared my body properly with certain supplementation, and we use supplementation afterwards to keep the cells going. And I don't work with prescriptions. And so this was all done with just like nutraceuticals and stuff that you can find in nature. And, you know, like blueberries are amazing for perpetuating stem cell production. So just like fun things like that, right? I ate a ton of blueberries during this time.
Delicious.
And so there's prolotherapy, that's the only thing that's like a little bit foreign, is like they'll use this sugar molecule that they'll inject, and it basically stimulates inflammation in the area. And that can be really great for inducing healing and building some scar tissue. So I had torn my wrist ligament when I originally did that wrist sprain, and I had a hand doctor be like, well, your only option is to fuse your bones. And I was like, I don't want to do that because I use my hands for work. So no, thank you. He's like, you'll end up with arthritis. And I was like, yeah, I'll pass. And so I just kind of dealt with it and just had to be really careful with my wrist for like a year because it was really unstable. I went through board exams with like a whole wrist brace on. It was ridiculous. And but I ended up doing the knee treatments, and then later we did like one injection in the wrist, and my wrist is normal again. Like, right? Like, the body's incredible. So in the knee, that was more severe. So we started with prolotherapy, kind of induced some inflammation, and just kind of, he made it akin to like laying down soil when you're putting in a garden, right? So we did the soil with the prolo. And then PRP stands for platelet-rich plasma. They draw your blood, they spin all the blood cells down, and they just take the plasma out, which is like all of these signals for your body, as well as the building blocks that your body needs to heal something. So then we gave the body the signal with the prolo, and then we gave it another signal and building blocks with the PRP. And I guess he kind of did a mixture of prolo and PRP. And then we did one thing of stem cells from my pelvis, which actually wasn't that bad. Very creative doc, right? The lesion was on the underside. This is what made me pick him. The lesion was on the underside of my kneecap, and everyone else wanted to cut open my knee to fix it and like make more damage. I was like, no, thanks. So this doc said, okay, I'm going to drill a hole through the top of your kneecap, and I'm going to inject the stem cells into the lesion on the underside. And then it's going to grow from underneath. It's going to grow new cartilage, and the old cartilage will slough off, and your body will absorb it. And that is what happened. It was amazing. Took about a year, but it happened. And then we finished up with another round of prolo and PRP just to kind of finish things up. And then I went through 8 months of PT, where I went about twice a week. And that PT did a bunch of dry needling. And we got really creative and like sent some current through the joint space, because that's how they grow cells in the lab, is with current, and it stimulated cell growth. And he broke up all the scar tissue from when I was 17, which nobody else had done. And I'd been to like 6 different PTs. And then I was like, oh, you're a PT. You're the PT I want to go to. And we did blood flow restriction training. We did e-stim. We did dry needling. He would like massage stuff out. He'd do tissue release. And then we do all the exercises too. So that I thought was pretty comprehensive care, and I refer people to him all the time because he's excellent. And then I learned dry needling because it's so incredibly helpful. And dry needling is something that you can kind of try even before regenerative stuff, because it basically will stimulate cell growth as well, but in a super gentle way. So dry needling is like a different form of acupuncture that's more musculoskeletal focused, more of a physical therapy technique. But when you put the needle in, they've shown in studies that they've done like sham injections, and people will get similar results just from the needle going in, because that needle, that puncture, stimulates your immune system to come to the area and to heal. And so it can do some really cool things. It can also break up tissue, break up scar tissue, induce scar tissue, depending on what you're trying to do. So there's different levels. So it'd be like, dry needling is kind of a PT technique, and then you go to regenerative medicine, which is like prolotherapy, PRP, stem cells are kind of the top level. But I liked using my own stem cells because there's a lot of stuff out there using, you know, pig stem cells or umbilical stem cells, and there's different arguments for all of them. But this is why doing your research and talking to different doctors is worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think that the big takeaway from everything you said was that there are people out there doing this stuff, right? And if you want to change something about your body from an injury or whatever, then search it out and be a detective, and don't just take what, like, oh, this is all it's ever going to be. This is as good as I'm going to get, because there's usually something that can be done. And so many modalities that you just mentioned can help our body do its thing, like, and it's like a phenomenal healing machine if you let it, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So cool.
And I saw a couple questions come in, so I'll post some referrals in the comments after this, so just make sure to comment below and ask again, and that will remind me to put them there. And then someone else asked about after having a baby, which I think is also an injury that people don't consider.
Yeah.
Like, your tissues go through a lot, whether you have a natural birth or you have a C-section. And that is a massive injury that your body needs to recover from.
Yeah.
And then we also have to reflect on the fact that after that, your hormones are going through a huge shift. You're also donating all your nutrients to this new little being, and you're not sleeping. And you need sleep to recover. And so it's a tricky situation to be in, and it's a super important time to be careful with your food. And, my sister just had her own baby about a year ago, and he would get like these little rashes on his arms.
Mm-hmm.
And most moms will just be like, oh, we're just going to put a cream on it and it'll go away. If your infant has a rash and the only thing that they are consuming is your breast milk, you might want to consider what you're putting in your mouth, because your infant might be sensitive to something that you're not. So my sister is fine with dairy, but her son is sensitive to dairy. So she had to cut dairy out of her diet, which ultimately helped her son out as well. So just consider those things when you're recovering. And it's a really important time to be doing a lot of extra nourishment. As always, consult your physician. This is not medical advice, but it's usually a good idea to stay on your prenatal, because you're donating so many nutrients. And just understanding that your body is going through this major shift, and getting some extra support during that time can be really important.
So true. So true. My son, my youngest, had a lot of food sensitivities when I was nursing him. And it was all about, I had to figure out what I was eating and adjust to that. Made a world of difference. So yeah, that's great. Do you want to talk about re-injury, and what do we need to think about from that standpoint?
Yes. So I'll just go back to using my story as an example, because this is why I've gotten so good at this stuff, is I just learned it in my own body. So that was me pushing through that wrist injury, right? And then I hurt my knee, and then I hurt it again. And it was me never taking a break and letting my body recover. Mm-hmm. And because I never took a break, my tissues continued to get weaker and weaker and weaker, which allowed me to get injured more easily, which perpetuated this whole terrible cycle. So if someone comes in and they are dealing with re-injury in some way, that lets me know that their body is kind of stuck in a little bit of a weird immune and chronic inflammatory state that I need to catch now. And a big part of that that a lot of people don't know is, when you get an injury, even if you just twist your ankle, your tissues become more permeable, and you can start to get some leaky gut from that. So if you get an ankle sprain, it means that you are suddenly more sensitive to food than you used to be, because your gut is more permeable, because our inflammation response is a systemic response. And the first part of that is our tissues become permeable, so our immune cells can travel to the area. But that means that your gut becomes more permeable, and your blood-brain barrier becomes more permeable. And so let's say that you had a mild sensitivity to gluten, no big deal. And then you get an ankle sprain. And then all of a sudden, when you eat gluten, now you get kind of puffy. And you're like, oh, that's weird. That didn't used to happen. Most of the time, people don't even notice this, which is why I teach them about this stuff, so they can start to notice it when it's happening. Mm-hmm. But that means that all of a sudden you're extra sensitive right now. And when you're healing, you just need to cut out those things that are inflaming you and come back to nourishing yourself with a really good whole foods diet. And, a lot of people also don't think about ultra marathoners. And we think like, wow, I can run so far. They're so healthy. No, that's so much stress on your
That's so
body.
bad.
It requires so much recovery.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really important to recover well. Like, you know, we have stress. There's good stress, like exercise. It's how our muscles grow and get bigger as we stress them a little bit. And then we let them recover and they grow. But this has to do with your biochemical states, because your body can really only be in certain states at certain times, and it can't do everything at once. So if you are in a stress state or an injury state, your body's in a little bit of a catabolic state. It means a breakdown state. You're breaking things down in your body to provide energy to either run away from the tiger or the thing that you're stressed about. Maybe it's just like your bills or your bad boss or a friendship that's in duress or whatever. And then you're in this catabolic state and you're breaking those things down, but we can't rebuild tissues while we're in that state. So we have to find a time to help our body feel safe, which is what that meditation was for me, right? It was me having conversations with my cells to let my body know that it was safe. And you kind of have to do that on an energetic level. You can't just like think it. You have to start to work with your own energy and get yourself into a relaxed state. Then when we enter that state, our biochemistry starts to shift into another thing that's less stress and cortisol based, and it enters what's called an anabolic state. This is why sleep is important. Sleep is where we do anabolic things in our body. We start to rebuild things. So we have to be able to do enough to get our body into that anabolic state to be able to recover and rebuild tissues.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think the vast majority of us live in a catabolic state day in and day out, you know, and not getting enough sleep and just pushing and pushing and pushing. So I love that. And do you want to talk about any guidelines or suggestions for that kind of meditation if somebody's unsure?
Sure. So the stuff that I was using was Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation. If you've ever heard of him, I love him. He is an awesome human and
so cool.
Contributing to humanity in the most profound ways. He's doing all the research behind this. He's partnering with the University of San Diego. I actually get to be a contributor to his research in July, so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. And but essentially, it is the idea of learning how to control your mind enough and work with your breath in the right ways so that you can get to a state of feeling safe. And also starting to learn how to induce a state where you kind of forget that you have a body. And you go into this very spacious, expanded place, which takes practice. Like, it's really hard. It takes at least 2 weeks of every single day meditating to start to really get this to work for you, because you're fighting chemistry, you're fighting old neural pathways. It takes work. And it's, you know, I had a client once and she's like, going to that quiet place, like, it feels really hard and it doesn't feel relaxing. And I was like, you're right. It's not relaxing. And it is hard. This is the definition of personal work. It's work. But sometimes you can't even, if you're super inflamed and your brain has been in a weird state, or you're dealing with mold like I was, it's like, sometimes you need help. And this is where body work comes in. Body work is an amazing way to start to break that energetic state for yourself and enter your body into a different place where you can actually now focus enough to meditate. So I don't want to just push it on people and be like, yeah, it's totally all about willpower. It's like, sometimes, but sometimes you need help, and it's okay to need help.
Yeah.
And this is where you work with a practitioner, or you work with someone who coaches you on this stuff. And his books are amazing. He has 4 books available and a whole bunch of trainings online for free. So just YouTube Dr. Joe Dispenza and you can start watching his lectures. And that is the kind of initial help that you can get. And he is one of many. When you say I meditate, that's like saying I listen to music. Kind of broad. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of meditation. And if sitting still just doesn't work for you, you can start with a walking meditation. But the idea is to go for a walk and not be thinking about your problems. It's to be thinking about your environment, and to be feeling your body, and to be feeling the space around you, and to just give yourself a break for once of thinking about your issues and thinking about the future and thinking about the past, and just allowing yourself to be present and in the moment. And Dr. Joe says in his work all the time, he's like, when people meditate and they become so present and so grateful to be where they are right now, to the point that they don't even care that they have a condition, that is when the condition disappears.
Awesome. That
And
is awesome.
he has so much research showing spontaneous remission. Like, it's happening. He
Yeah.
said, like, one woman, and I love him, right? Because he's just this humble guy who's like, we didn't know this was going to happen, so I started measuring it. And there was one woman who regrew her thyroid, her ablated thyroid.
Wow.
Right? Like, your
That's
body
amazing.
is incredible.
Yeah.
And not to say, like, that's a normal thing. It's just, but like, this stuff is happening just from people
Right.
showing up and like giving it a try and kind of going all in. And it's just one of those things. And that's where I was at. I was at a place where I was just like, well, I have nothing to lose. So, and when you're at that place, it's like, that can actually be one of the most powerful times to do it.
Yeah. This has just been such a great reframe, because I think, you know, when we have an illness or we have an injury, a lot of us, we get angry at our body. Like, why is my body against me? Or what, you know, why is this, and that's such the wrong mindset to be in for healing. You just said that. When we let go of being upset about where we are, we actually can heal. So I think reframing, like you just did with this talk, is, you know, maybe your injury or your chronic illness or whatever it is your path forward, and it is really a blessing instead of something to be upset about, which takes a lot of work to get there, for sure.
I just want to add one thought to that comment, because I'm so glad that you said that. How you talk to your body is so important. Like, I used to say, oh, my bad knee. And I was very angry at it because my wrist, like, it messed up my life. I was very frustrated. And then I realized and reflected on how dang hard I'd been pushing my body, and how hard that knee has worked and how many times it's been injured.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I shifted. I was like, you know what? You're not my bad knee. You're my knee that needs extra love. Like, I am so sorry that you have been through all of this. And
your special knee, right?
Yeah. It's my knee that needs extra love.
Yeah.
And, you know, any of my patients, like, I have a lot of people with, you know, low back stuff. And I'm like, no, it's like the part of your low back that needs extra love. And when it's angry, it is talking to you and it's asking for help. And so if you can start to go inward and have these conversations, so, you know, you're RA, right? Like, let's say that you're someone who's dealing with a true autoimmune condition, going inward and speaking to the synovial linings of your joints and being like, I am so sorry that you've been through this. Like, and I'm so sorry that I pushed so hard, and man, like, I love you and I am so grateful for all you've done. And like, my immune system, like, I understand you're just trying to help me, and like, thank you. But also, like, we're not under attack. You can relax. Like, we are okay. And just starting to enter into that kind of perception changes the energetic signal that you're sending to your cells. And people forget that the most important part of healing is the signal you're sending to your body of what you want it to do.
Yes.
And if you're resentful, that resentment is a low frequency energy that's not going to be healing. And, you know, if you've been so let's say you've dealt with trauma in your life and you're resentful at another person or a situation, people are like, well, I don't want to forgive that person. Like, that's just not fair. Well, you know, that forgiveness isn't really for them. It's for you.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so, in our bodies, our cells are always listening to our thoughts, right? So we have to choose our thoughts very carefully.
Yep. And that's what all Dispensa's work is about. It's like learning how to reframe your thoughts.
Yeah. Love it. This was great, Dr. Christine. Thank you so much. And I know you have an upcoming program, so I would love to hear you tell us a little bit about that.
No, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you a lot. This is fun. So yeah, I ended up developing an online program to make this more accessible, because one of the biggest complaints I get about functional medicine is that it's not accessible or it's too expensive or things like that. So I wanted to make it more available. And I also wanted to bring community to it, because when you're going through dealing with a condition or being injured, you tend to retreat because you don't feel well. And it becomes like the loneliest thing in the world. And you can be working with a really wonderful practitioner, but in between appointments can end up being super lonely. And so I wanted to make something that was supportive over a period of time. So I run a 5-week group program, and it's taking people through learning how their immune system works and making some goals and making some habit shifts in their life with support, because trying to do it by yourself can be really, really hard. And so having a group of people that is pulling you in the direction you want to go is healing in itself. And I like it because the groups are different every time. And I do them based on what people want to learn. So there's like a foundational recorded video that you watch on your own time, because I wanted it to actually be doable and accessible for people, and everyone has different schedules. And then we meet once a week. This will be on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, this one. And then we talk about the material, and I help you through roadblocks, and we talk as a group and as a team, and it's creating a safe container and a place for people to have community. And I also, you have worksheets that you're working through the whole time to kind of keep you on track. They're optional. Like you are going to get as much out of it as much as you put into it. So it's meant to be accessible. And this is really just for anyone who has realized that their body needs a little extra care right now, because I call it Foundations for Health. And it's understanding how your immune system works and how your cells work and why things are important. So it's not just me like giving you a diet, it's me teaching you how to make your own diet based on what your body's doing. Because you might have a week where you do fine with things that you've been sensitive to, and then you might have a week where it makes a rash pop up or something. That's your body speaking. So that week you're going to be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this food as much. And so it's me teaching you how to see these things and how to recognize these things, while also introducing you to mindfulness and meditation in a fun way. Because I think a lot of people see it as a task where it's really daunting, or they just don't want to do it. But I try to do it in a way that is fun and helps people to integrate it into their daily life. And then I have a meditation coach I work with. So if people, like last time, people wanted to ask her questions, so I just brought her on for one of the lives, and they asked her whatever questions they wanted. And other people had questions about cooking hacks, and I have a professional chef I work with, so I brought on the professional chef, and she answered questions about cooking for food sensitivities. So it's just where you want. That's what I try to bring in. So it's a way that I can serve people much better. I actually prefer group programs because it's just fun, and we address things that I can't address in office. And there's even a video in there where I take you through the grocery store and I show you how to read labels and shopping. And I can't do that in office. So I give you so much more education in the group course. So if anyone's interested in that, you can just go to depthwellness, depth.com/resources. There's even a free masterclass there if you want to check it out and just get a feel for how I teach. And then there's a link below that if you want to join the group program, which starts next week. So I believe the cart is going to close on the 26th. So definitely sign up, because it is filling up quick, but I'd love to have you. Because I think having a group and creating a container is how we create space for transformation in our life.
I love it. It sounds like the perfect program for just about everyone. A great starting point.
Yeah, it's no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what you're working on, no matter what treatment you're going through, this is just understanding how to listen to your own body. So it is foundational for anyone and everyone, and anybody that you're working with is going to be appreciative of you having this knowledge of physiology in your body. So it really is just good for anybody.
Awesome. Well, good luck. Enjoy that. That sounds amazing. And thank you again for joining me. This has been so much fun. And for that reframe, that just beautiful reframe of sometimes our body is giving us a blessing even when we don't see it that way. So thank you. And have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Definitely. And for anybody who is wondering, because I saw a couple questions, it's just depthwellness.com. I just put it in the chat, depthwellness.com/resources, or you can click my name, just Dr. Christine Smith, and follow the channel. And then there's also a link in the bio, and that'll take you to the same page. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dr.
You're welcome. All right. Bye-bye.